Nicola, over to you.
Thank you very much. Cue crystal ball jokes. That's why I'm not a futurologist anymore, because I do have one. Just doesn't work, unfortunately. So yes, my name is Nicola. I am Head of Customer Insight and Futures at BT Global Services. For those of you who don't know BT Global Services, we're not the bit of BT that does your home broadband. We're the bit that serves very large multinational corporates around the world. We work in 170 countries, believe it or not. Certainly, I'm part of the team that is really there to channel the innovation that we do at BT, and we are the third biggest investor actually in R&D in the UK, behind a couple of pharmaceutical companies. We're also the third biggest fixed line investor in the world in R&D, so we do a lot of R&D. And I'd like to thank the organisers of this conference for making me feel very old, because I was trying to work out the last time I spoke at an AI conference, and I think it was 21 years ago. So obviously I was only 8 then, my career in BT started very much in the AI area. Now, I'm a psychologist by background, so I keep saying that if you're a psychologist that's interested in technology, you go one of two ways, frankly. You either go into usability, which actually, oddly, I did at one point in my career, or you go into AI. And actually, I was recruited into BT back in 1990 off the wave of excitement, the first wave of excitement about AI and expert systems. And I was all too happy to start to look at how we could apply things like neural networks and expert systems, and of course AI as well, into businesses. So I'm going to reminisce a bit with you today. It's very unusual for me to do that, but my story really started 25 years ago. We actually started looking at expert systems probably about 1988. I think they started to form the group. My first project was called ESCAFE, which was Expert Systems for Customer-Facing Environments. We love an acronym in BT. I'm based at Adastral Park. So we started doing a lot of this stuff in Ipswich, which is our main R&D centre. As it exists now, it certainly existed then. We have a very, very big core of very, very clever people at Adastral Park, and I always say I stand on their shoulders. So a lot of what I'm going to present today is largely the result of our really clever research and researchers at Adastral Park, which, by the way, is just outside Ipswich in the middle of a cow field. Although it's a cow field with a poundland opposite it now, so I think we've arrived finally. So from Adastral Park, we started to create a system that we were looking at applications for it. And actually the contact centre, or call centres as they were then called, was one obvious way of trying to test out whether AI neural nets and expert systems could work. So from Ipswich, we travelled across to the Wild West, to Burnham-on-Sea, a lovely little place, a lovely seaside town that happened to have our International Customer Service Centre, again, oddly sitting in a cow field. There is a theme here. This is the centre that was absolutely core to our international global network. It is sadly no longer there, but this is the centre that basically looked at diagnosing complex faults with international circuits. So a brilliant area to try and apply an expert system to. So the technical bit largely is, so we had a user interface that was a mixed initiative one. Now, one of the aims of the project was to try and create a consistent customer experience. Oddly enough, this has always been the aim. 25 years later, I'm getting similar ambitions. So the first thing is we had differing levels of knowledge in our customer base. Now, obviously, these are international circuits. Largely, the customers we are talking about would be operators, network operators in other large global corporates. So they got some knowledge about the network, but the knowledge would vary. Also, our agents' knowledge varied as well. We had agents that had just come in that maybe were still learning. We had some that had been there for 10 years and really knew a lot about how to diagnose a fault. Now, my role then was largely to act as the deep learning engine. So my role was to identify our real expert agents and take them through a process of how on earth do you diagnose these faults. And then, of course, we took that deep learning into an inference engine which was driven by a neural network and natural language processing. We then, on top of that, put a screen scraping engine. So effectively an engine that came back into the databases in the back, of which there were many, there always are in customer service, to try and get the bits of information that we needed in order to start to diagnose faults. So we actually implemented this, and I think we claim, I'm sure it's true, this is the first ever implementation of an expert system into a contact center, call center into Europe. So we had all sorts of stuff, and I even found the old documentation. I never throw stuff away. It's always a good thing, because it's always useful. We could create dynamic dialogues depending on whether the agent was actually really expert or the customer was expert. We could actually create a very dynamic dialogue that might take you through things like, what testing have you done, to have you switched it on? Have you turned it on and off? Always the classic question to ask a customer when you're diagnosing a fault. We could actually offer mixed initiative dialogue as well. So either there was a script, a dynamic script that was a question and answer, or we could actually get the agent to drive the dialogue and they could input directly, depending on, again, on how expert they were. And then we used the back end to pretty much handhold both the customer and the advisor through the advice. So actually, what we learnt then, many, many years ago, was this approach worked. Actually, it worked for customers because it helped them to get to their goal, to actually fix the faults. It worked for the advisors as well. And I have to say, one of the key things, and it was mentioned earlier in the American Airlines thing, involving staff on this actually does gain their trust and confidence in the system. More on that in a second. So actually engaging the staff in terms of the knowledge management and mining, so the data collection that I was doing, helped to get them very much involved in the system and helped them to become confident in using the system. What didn't work in the 90s, unfortunately, was it cost a lot of money. So firstly, screen scraping. Brilliant technology, but as soon as you move one field slightly, you have to reprogram the screen scraping technology. Now, of course, now we have robotic process automation. Some of that is being solved, so some of that cost is being taken out. And obviously, we didn't have deep learning engines then. We had me. So again, resource intensive. I had to keep renewing the knowledge base. Although the neural net did learn to a certain extent, it was pretty dumb. So we knew the approach worked. We didn't abandon Escofeet altogether. We kept playing with it in different circumstances. And we started to use the same technology in a project again in 1993 called Epsilon. Now, Epsilon used pretty much the same back-end technology. What we did was to add a natural language front end. So in other words, it listened to the call that the agent was taking. It started to pick out keywords, and then it initiated a search into the back-end databases and automatically pulled up links that it thought would be relevant for the agent to help them manage the dialogue. Now, the difference in this project was we didn't involve the agents in the knowledge capture process. And guess what happened? They didn't use any of the suggestions. So although there was a dialogue box that popped up in the contact center advisor's screen, they pretty much ignored it. And of course, that's a big problem with this. As again, a lot of speakers have said, you can't just put this in, you do need to get it to work with the human advisor, the user. So this is very much the user-centered problem, particularly if you do want to combine human and AI together. So generally, we proved this actually worked. Now, of course, we then entered what we were just talking about, the nuclear winter of expert systems and AI, where everyone forgot about it for about 10 years. And then we started to go, well, actually, and we have some incredible guys working in the intelligent systems and AI area at Adastral Park. Those guys basically revived some of the ideas back in actually about 2008 as social networks were starting to come in. And of course, social networks, massive unstructured data sets, a really good way of applying intelligent systems technology. So Simon Thompson, who was the principal researcher on a project called Hubbub, started to look at applying this unstructured data set alongside intelligent systems, but also alongside customer communities. So we were starting to get this peer-to-peer community support thing starting to go in forums, for example. So Hubbub basically was powered by an intelligent system, but it wasn't itself an AI system. And I think the best AI is AI you don't notice, and this is pretty much AI you don't notice. So what Hubbub did was take really enthusiastic people, our customers, who were actually solving our problems for us on forums. So we have people like Mr. Jolly here on our forums, who we estimated at one point was contributing about 39 hours of unpaid consultancy to us, solving our problems on a community forum. Now, the problem with community forums is it's horribly unstructured. It's very difficult to find anything. So actually what Simon and his team did was to start to apply intelligent systems to help us take the data on, to help us structure the data better, to help it become a lot more navigable, but also fundamentally to help us to sort through it and make meaning of it as well, because we can use this data to actually improve our own products and services as well. So Hubbub was kind of the start of applying intelligent and expert systems into the unstructured data space for the customer's benefit. We then move on to almost present day, to be perfectly honest. A project, again, that uses the same technology as Hubbub, but it's called Debatescape. Debatescape is actually still used in BT to manage our social media content. And again, it's an intelligent systems algorithm that takes this horribly unstructured space, starts to spot things like, well, we point it at forums like, I think there's broadband.com, we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter. It monitors those forums, starts to pull out mentions of the brand, so and the context of those mentions, because of course BT, there is a BT that's a rock musician that gets a lot of our traffic, bless him. BT is also an abbreviation, so it can be used out of context, so actually bringing in context analysis helps us. So if it's BT and it's got the word broadband maybe associated with it, we can guess that it's probably something to do with us. Obviously, other than context, it looks at things like sentiment analysis, it looks at virality, and then it does something that's very clever. It then skills-based roots it. Now, this is very key to things like contact centers. So it makes an intelligent assumption that if it's about home movers, as it is with Dom Jolie, actually virality is another thing that powers this. Someone who is famous probably gets escalated slightly higher in the queue in terms of the network analysis. Dom Jolie was complaining about house moving, which is often a process that derails in BT because it's a horribly complex process. He goes onto Twitter to his 2 million followers, starts tweeting about it. Debatescape picks it up within 20 minutes, routes it to the home movers team, who then call Dom Jolie and try and sort the problem out. So again, pragmatic use of intelligent systems to try and help us to not manually have to sort through lots and lots of social media data and hopefully proactively intervene. But we rely very heavily on our human experts at the end. So it's the skills-based routing that's one of the very key aspects of Debatescape. It tries to find the person that's most likely to answer the question. So it's a very good example of how humans and AI can be blended in the customer service space. Now, this presentation is entitled SuperAgent 2020 because a lot of the work that I do now is around how are contact centers starting to evolve by the year 2020. And it's not just AI that is evolving the contact center, it is us, the customer. We are changing quite a lot in the way that we interact with organizations. For a start, self-service and digital have actually driven us to do a lot more ourselves. Hence, we call a lot of our customer research the autonomous customer. The clue is in the title. We do a lot more ourselves. We Google, we possibly read the FAQs, we try and solve our own problems, and then, and only then do we go, oh God, I'm going to have to contact them. So, SuperAgent 2020 was really a piece of research that looked at what we thought the contact center was going to evolve to by 2020. And we asked the industry itself. And the first thing they said was, we are going to be dealing with really complex stuff because, frankly, maybe bots, maybe AI, maybe simply self-service is going to help our customers to do an awful lot themselves. Therefore, they're only going to involve people like the contact center advisor when they've got complex and emotive things that they can't do themselves. They're not just going to call us on the phone. They're going to chat with us. They are going to go on social media. They might want video. And this is, again, where we start to see the kind of skills of an agent themselves shift. Hence, SuperAgent. If we've got complex stuff coming in, do we need agents with their underpants on over their trousers who can leap tall buildings, have X-ray vision, be really experts? Well, yes, to a certain extent. We can't just employ a 16-year-old with a script anymore. We do need experts who are really good communicators. But of course, we are starting to see the value of things like empathy, maybe, certainly negotiation skills, caring. All of those things are actually things that we can't automate. And that isn't just about AI. Other things, obviously, we've got lots of technologies contributing to this. So the industry thought these were the technologies that were going to really influence the contact center by 2020. You will notice a notable thing that is not there is AI. But AI plays an awful lot of a role in some of the things that they have mentioned. Intelligent skills-based routing, I call this speed dating. How do you speed date a complex customer problem with the right person, with the right skills that might be in the contact center, but actually, because of cloud technologies, could be sitting on the end of a browser and a network connection absolutely anywhere down the service chain. So that's certainly one element that we can see AI coming into. Big data analytics. Now, one of the fundamental problems with the contact center is they get lots of demand, but they don't necessarily know what that demand is. If we can start to understand the demand from the customer in real time, could we start to get the contact center in a much more strategic place, being much more proactive with customers, to actually contact them before they have a problem? AI probably plays a very big role in that. But of course, there are lots of things we could apply AI into the contact center from, and certainly in the innovation space for global services, I am looking at the moment about what can we do to help our customers get what they need. So we've got everything from chatbots, which I think have some merit. Of course, they can go a little bit wild. And we also probably need to be able to transfer from chatbot to human when it gets way more complex. I think the intelligent routing piece is very, very key for AI in the contact center as well. And obviously, we've got some of the robotic process automation. Hopefully, we'll take out all of that rekeying and multiple systems engagement that we often see in contact centers. And then, of course, we've got all sorts of other stuff, and we've been talking about this pretty much all of the day. Certainly even our robotic customer service advisors, physical ones, in retail stores and hotels. So I think we're in a really interesting place, not just in the contact center industry at the moment, because I think the contact center is rapidly changing from something that processes lots and lots of calls really, really fast to something that adds the value of a human brain. But how do we actually start to connect that human brain with AI to help manage the real complexity that the average customer service advisor has to manage on the customer's behalf? Their job is sticking the fork into the spaghetti of back-end process. How do we help them do that using things like AI and intelligent systems? So that was rather quick, I apologise, but that was kind of a retrospective, maybe a present, and somewhat the future of where I think we're going to see AI applied into the contact centre, and certainly it's going to very radically change the customer experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologise for hanging around at the back like Bela Lugosi at the opera, kind of waving at you to wrap up. So, has anyone got any very quick? We've got about a minute for questions. We're very tight on time. Anyone got a burning question, or do you want to defer that to coffee towards the end? We'll defer that to coffee towards the end.
I'm going to have to nip off. So if anyone has a question, tweet me, email me. I'll answer it.
Very quick, yes.
So, one of the challenges that I would imagine. Sorry. one of the challenges I imagine you face, like many organisations, you operate a lot of call centres out of India, so therefore the cost base is actually comparatively low. So if you're going to introduce new technology, that tends to be quite expensive at the beginning. So how do you square that to make it work?
I think that's one element of what we're seeing change in the contact centre now, in that it's not so much about focusing on cost of transaction, it's more about the customer experience. So we're starting to see slightly more investment coming into the model. I think, again, we're starting to see the contact centre move into a slightly more strategic place, in that it's the place where there's a lot of data about customers coming in. So again, rather than pushing it out to the periphery of an organisation, there are a lot of customers now that I'm working with starting to use it much more as a pulse of the customer, and taking that data in and using it internally to start to promote customer experience. That's why I think it's quite an interesting, I could do a whole talk on the changing contact centre, to be honest, but it's less relevant to AI. But it's an industry that's changing fundamentally at the moment, because we're changing and our demands on the contact centre are changing as well and becoming much more complex. So I think that sort of minimised cost piece is starting to transform as well.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. Again, Nicola, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will